join us for another episode where real men have real conversations about leadership, relationships, morality, and dominion. Welcome to Mancode.
Hey, viewing audience. My name is Jonathan Russell. I'd like to welcome you back to the Mancode conversation.
I could rant on this a little bit, but let's go back to losing a dad again. Just how real though is the resentment from losing your father compared to him just being absent in your life? So let's say you have lost your father. We've all lost our fathers, but this is for those who have dads that just ghost them. But the resentment is real on both ends of the stick. So how does that compare up?
Well, I want to hear you guys, because right now I don't have personal experience on that, but I do have some thoughts on it. But I want to hear from some people that have that personal experience first and see what their thoughts are.
Well, I'll knock this one out because I have to say, when I lost my dad, January 22, I had to fight bitterness. Okay. And I didn't even know what I was bitter about. But I think I was just bitter because I was bitter, because I wanted him to live. That wasn't something that I wanted to see. So naturally, that hurt, that bitterness set in. I had to fight that so that it wouldn't turn into resentment. And the thing is, I felt like that was an unanswered prayer, him dying. So I had to fight to kind of stay hopeful, just so I wouldn't turn cold on the inside, just so I wouldn't stop believing in God, just so I wouldn't stop trusting, because it shook me. And it shook me from a place that I wasn't ready for. So yes, that resentment can be real. But on the other end of the stick, you take, for example, young men who know who their fathers are, but they just never had that connection. Dad never wanted to be bothered. Dad never had the courage to step up and acknowledge them as a son. And I've seen that instance, not for me personally, I've seen those instances. And actually, yes, that resentment is real. You're bitter about that. You know, you're not feeling good that the man who gave life to you, whether or not it was on purpose, by accident or whatever, don't even want to acknowledge who you are. And that can actually create a very negative society, which is really a lot of what we have now. So,
yeah. Well, I like what you said there. I think back to, like I say, I lost my real father. Never knew him when I was young. Had a stepfather who did the best he could. But as a stepfather, you coming in, you have certain things that you're watching for, and you don't want to come in too aggressive, whatever. But I think back, I can give you some examples. Resentment, where resentment did kick into a degree. I'm the youngest of four children, two brothers and one sister. And however we played sports, elder family would know about this too. And all my siblings played sports, and my parents would always go to their ball games and so forth. But by the time young fella came around, I guess they were worn out. And you see, so therefore, and actually not, don't get me started, Brother Jonathan, but I may have had the best athletic career of all of us. But the point is, they didn't come see me. So like when parent nights came around, I had to have my cousin one time walk me out there on a parents' night and so forth. Then when basketball season came around on parents' night, I said, I'm not even going to the game. I skipped the game and hung out with doing some things I shouldn't have been doing. But my point was, because I didn't want to go through that experience again, having my parents not show up or having them come, me sit on the bench, that type of thing, when they would only come maybe once in every so many moons, and so yeah. So there was a little bit of resentment of, well, you go to their games, but you can't come to mine. See, so that was in a sense not having them there, even though they were there. But there were some other things that you don't see as a kid that was taking place in the area where we live. Had some situations in the home dynamics, not our home, but things were happening in the neighborhood, and you don't always understand that as a kid. All you want is your parents there to support you. When your name is called, he was brought down by number 41. You want to understand, and you never get that. And that does, for me, kind of, maybe a little bit of resentment took place and some hurt there, So, yeah, so I can see that taking place for sure.
Well, for me, I would have a little resentment, not just a little. I had quite a bit of resentment because I just didn't lose a father. My father was murdered, so he was taken away from me. It wasn't something the age was a circumstance or a health condition or whatever the factors may be. I had a lot of resentment, hurt, and anger, and whatever else is in that whole bag of hurt. And I felt a lot of different ways, you know. At one point, I even felt like I didn't want to move on, you know, because he wasn't there. I didn't want to be there. And I thought I could go where he was at. And he and I could do some of the fun things that, you know, a little young teenager would want to do. You know, not that he did a lot of great things. He did teach us some skills on how to survive, how to work. You know, he created a work ethic in us, you know, but the way he was taken, you know, just all of a sudden, abruptly, yeah, it causes a lot of resentment, you know, on how that happened. So that's my feeling on that piece.
Yeah. And just to jump into it, back then, of course, we weren't getting any counseling. All the trauma that we went through, man, we weren't getting any counseling. Man, you just better get over it. You know how your parents tell you, man, you know, couldn't make it, you know, had something to do. You know, it wasn't a whole, in my particular situation, it wasn't a whole lot of discussion and long answers. You just better just deal with it. You know what I'm saying? And that didn't always, you know, bode well for a person that's trying to, you know, would at least want some compassion, some understanding. You know, we just had to, as they say, just man up and just, you know, just deal with it, man.
It was like that 3-day funeral. They last for that 3 days, and then all of a sudden they were gone and nothing else there. You had to, if you didn't get it in, the counseling in the 3 days, you were out
Yeah.
there defend on your own.
Yeah, this is a really deep question, man. I think man, for me, so I think in both scenarios, people have the same feelings, but I guess where the energy is directed, and this is my personal experience, where the energy directed is different. And I'm just be 100% transparent with you guys. So whoever doesn't know, my dad was a pastor, did a lot of great things for the community, for our denomination, really, I mean, for the state, his impact was huge. And so, you know, here's my dad, right? And I'm looking at other pastors who are just like terrible people, like publicly not good people. And so I'm like, God, like, but he, you know, had all these kids and he was sleeping around on his wife and was only sorry because he got caught. And, you know, he was doing this, he was doing that, this person did that. And so I'm just like, you know, God, like, why my dad, right? So that like anger, that resentment, playing the comparison game, just being upset, my energy was targeted towards God, right? Like I was just angry and you know, honestly, still working through it, like still love God, still believe in God, still go to church, still a tither, all of that stuff. But this is just a phase in my life that I'm working through right now. And so like that, those were the feelings I had towards God. Whereas I feel like if somebody loses a father that they never had in their life, they have those same feelings, but it could be targeted towards their father. And so I think the feelings are the same, but who the feelings are targeted towards is completely different. That's just my hypothesis about it.
Brother Austin, I agree with you 100%. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I had experience with the loss of a very precious person to me. And I had the same things, you know, saying like, Lord, why, you know, you could have took, you know, for lack of better words, this crackhead. But then God checked me. He said, where were you? He said, where were you when I laid the foundations? You know what I'm saying? I'm repenting at that point. I didn't say another word, man. You know, so I get where you're coming from because you be having those thoughts, you know, this exemplary person, and you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, but who are we? You know, but God really gave me some clarity on that real quick. Yeah. So, but I definitely understand where you're coming from.
You want to tap on that, Danielle?
I'm good. I think you circled around. I'm good.
Let's look at this different. Children of divorce. Okay. Separation is separation. But do those kids feel the loss in that way that somebody who lost their parents from death would? And let's say it's a bad situation. I mean, not just like divorce and like you have your parent on the other side of town or, you know, on the few blocks over. No, you have actually a split. They're gone, they're ghosted out of your life. How does that feel? How does that look? Do they feel that same sense of like their heart being ripped away from them?
So you're saying when the person when they're there and they go through a divorce and then they're separate, that type of thing? Is that the question? Pretty
Well,
much.
let's say the kids that are of divorced parents, do they have that same sense of loss, that
Okay.
same hurt as those whose parents have actually died?
Oh, okay. Well, I would say, of course, it's an individual thing. I would say possibly, maybe yes, no, depending on the people, the person. But long story short, death and divorce, they're very synonymous. It's a separation. It's pretty much the same thing. There's a ripping apart. The emotions, the feeling, they're all pretty much very, very closely related. So therefore, in my estimation, the feelings are going to be very similar. But yeah, so to me, I could see them having the same type of things, because to lose someone, that connection is being ripped apart. When someone dies, it's like they're gone, and when someone leaves you, it's like they're gone. And if those relationships aren't rekindled and you have no further connection with them, even if a divorced parent, now that could be different. That could heal during the course of time, because there's a chance that you, as you said earlier, could reconcile and see them again and restore and redevelop that relationship. But if they're gone, death, hopefully they're saved and you'll see them again on the other side. But if they're, when they're deaf, when they're dead, they're gone. So you'll have no more connection with them, at least on the physical level in this particular lifetime. So yeah, but a lot of the emotions I could see being the same. But that's one thing about death. Death is final until the other parts of, I don't want to get too theological, the other things that take place. But in this life, you know what I'm saying?
Okay. What are y'all
It's kind of
thoughts?
quiet in this church tonight.
I know. I'm like, what are y'all thoughts on that?
No, I would just concur with what Pastor Crawford shared. I think they're synonymous. Also, loss is loss. Especially coming from a child's domain. Where their thinking is. They don't have a lot of exposure to the real life, so only thing they could, I think, use to evaluate it is the life experiences they had up until that point, whether it's death or separation or divorce. So I think each situation is going to be a little different because you have so many tendencies. Was the dad around? Was he being a true father? If he was neglectful or not being, true fathers, so without knowing all those aspects, I would just concur with Pastor Crawford on his.
Yeah, I think it's some similarities, because in either scenario, there's a lot of what ifs that a person could ask themselves, right? And so it's like, what if he was here, and what if he was, present and great, we loved him, or what if him and my mom didn't get a divorce? It's like there's just so many questions that could be asked. But I guess like in a divorce situation, there is, in either situation, like none of us know like when we're gonna go, right? When we leave this earth. And so my thing is, like, as long as we have time and we woke up that day or whatever, like, we got to be intentional about rebuilding certain relationships. Because time is borrowed. Like, you don't know, like, tomorrow's not promised. So it's like either way, you got to be intentional and have those moments of, self-reflection, and like really check yourself and get yourself together and say, look, my son or my daughter only gets, one father that they'll share DNA with. So what do I need to do to get it right, to make sure that we can have as best as a relationship as possible? So, long story short, like I said, I think there are similarities because there are so many what ifs that happen in either scenario.
So I have not had that experience. I believe it was potentially could have happened in the situation when my mother found out about my younger brother. She was talking about leaving, but never left. And so, so what I just basically want to share is that anyone who is going through that situation, in your relationship, it is really important that no matter what is going on in your life and in your relationship, you don't allow that to impact the life of your children. You still come together as a united front with your children. You no matter how bad you may feel about each other, you should never speak of each other in a negative light to your children. Your children should always see you in the positive, and let your child form their own opinion of that parent and not let you color the opinion based on the hurt that you've experienced from that divorce. I think sometimes you have kids who get jilted because of the offense or hurt of the father or the mother, which then colors the child's relationship. I think that's when kids start realizing, even in divorce, how you can play one parent against the other in order to create loopholes, and those loopholes then create issues where neither parent can be held accountable to holding the child accountable, because they've created these loopholes. So the dad wants to say something about the behavior of the child, but feels he can't because of the condition of the relationship. The wife wants to say something to the husband, but can't because of the condition of the relationship. And the child sits right there in the middle and knows that tension is there and lives in there and does all manner of things. And so it's important that you guys come together for the sake of the child, and you make sure you don't speak ill of either.
I like that. You had some good advice on that, because that's just structure. That's just teaching them for the future. But in thinking about this, I kind of look at it from two standpoints, because I was actually a parent of divorce. Okay, so naturally I can compare that, because you have to look at, that's a death, and that's a heavy separation. And you compare that with kids who don't have a father at home, and it's really the same thing, because it's an absence, it's a hole there. Even though on one sense, my kid was used to me being there, and now I'm not there. That security blanket is gone. That comfort, that's missing. So yes, that leaves a big void. And then we look at the absent dad, or the dad that you've lost, that's a void. So it all connects. But I will just throw this in there. If you are a parent, you're divorced, fight for seeing your kids. Fight for that. I will say that is a real thing. And if you let too much time from bitterness, fighting, resentment, all that keep you from your children, that's only going to further that wedge between you and them. So I would say fight for that. And that's something that I had to do. I'm glad I did. I didn't do it as well as I could, and I probably didn't do it as fast as I should have. But at the same time, men, fight for the right to be a father, and man up and be a father. But while we're kind of sticking in this, I'm going to ask this, because I think we could all be very candid on this. What can you tell a man who has lost a father? How can you tell him how to heal? What steps can you offer him to heal? What are things that we may have done, or?
Well, can we work? Well, I want to work this from a lot of different angles. When I say angles, different phases or stages, like I say, if the guy is 25, that conversation will be a little bit different. If the guy is 15, that's going to be a little bit different. I guess I would just say, let's say you got a young person about 13 or 15, like Elder Fant was saying, he was 12, in those very formative years. You would want to be there just to comfort and those type of things, and maybe be a mentor, those type of things. And, if they come from a religious family, you can talk about how God, and the relationship there and there's for. But let's just say, if the guy is, let's say, an adult, and the relationship, of course, that conversation would depend on how that relationship was. But let's say it was a good relationship, and he just can't seem to move forward. Maybe he's even suicidal or whatever. You may just have to get that person some help. If you can't, give him or her, give him the support that he needs. Say, man, you might need to get some counseling, because he's thinking about checking out. With his dad, he doesn't know what to do, and all those types of things. So yeah, I would just, of course, like I say, if he was bitter at his dad, you could talk to him about, forgiving, repentance, and all those type of things. But it depends on where he was in the relationship with his father, and that would be key. But yeah, so there's a lot of things that it depends on the circumstances. But the main thing I would just say is just try to be there and try to meet whatever need he needed to be met at that particular time, and that would just take some conversation, you praying, you being discerning, and all those types of things. But just be a support. Sometimes you just have to be there just to listen, man.
If I could echo what Pastor Crawford just mentioned, my my eldest son, I know we're talking about fathers, but we're talking about what could they potentially do, right? So my eldest son lost his mother when he was like 1.5. And what they did for us was they created this scrapbook of all of her moments, from a baby all the way up until to present. And then we presented it to him so that he could remember her in the times because he wouldn't have known her because of his age. And so I think for young men or even for families, when you lose a father, it will be good to create some kind of memorabilia booklet that allows at a young age, as you were speaking to Pastor Malcolm, that in those times when you're missing, you can grab that book and you can look through the pages and you can live vicariously through the photos and remember, or you can pull that book out and sit with the mother or an auntie or uncle and sit and you can tell stories of, oh, I remember that photo. That's when, and then that becomes alive to that child. And it can help that child through those times. If you had a longer time with your father, I would say honor the things that he tried to instill in you. I know for me, it's about Lewis' legacy. What does the Lewis name mean? And then what am I going to do to add to that legacy? I want to bring honor to the name, because if he didn't leave you anything, he left the name. The name is your legacy. And when they speak of that name, what are they speaking of? What have you added to it? And so everything I do it unto the name. I do it unto the Lewis name. When I talk to my boys, I was like, you don't walk out of here any kind of way. You don't act any kind of way because you're a Lewis. That means something. When you say that my name is this Lewis, it's what's connected to that is the legacy that follows that name. And so one of the things we can do to honor our fathers is to carry the legacy of the name and make the name great.
Yeah, but Johnny, I like what you just said, because if my mother, and like I said, I had to give my mother some grace too, because she was very young. She had 4 children by the time she was 20, and I was the youngest. And my point, like I said, if I had about 4 pictures that I've only seen of my father, 4 pictures, and she never talked about him, at all, at all. And I never went down south, and that's where they were from, Mississippi. And I never even saw my grandmother, his mother, until she passed. So there was never conversation about him. Never had anything. The only thing that you would hear is when you see people come around, is boy, you look just like your daddy. Your daddy was, you hear all those conversations. But from the person that actually was there, and as I think about it, and me and Elfan had a deep conversation about a month, 2 or 3 months ago. But they're going through their things too. I'm sure my mother was going through her difficulties, her challenges, and she didn't probably have the support she needed to deal with all that too. See, so, and it wasn't that, I don't think she was just willfully trying to withhold stuff, but she had kind of moved on whatever she was going through to get through that. So you never knew. And so that leaves a void there. But that would have been great if we could have had, that oral history and those pictures. That would have been a great way to deal with that loss and get a better understanding of where you come from and who you come from, that type of thing. That's good.
Well, I'll just be short with mine. And I would just say, for someone that has lost their father, know that you have another father who's always with you. You'll never lose him. Never lose him. So just introduce him to the real father that's not going anywhere, and be supportive, be helpful, be there. Let them know you're there to help them through any time. Don't worry about what time you feel like you need to call. Just be that support. That's
Elder, who is that real father? we better be clear. Let's be clear now. Who's that real father? I'm a pastor.
Well, it's only one real one. It's only one real one. Trust
What's
me.
his name? All right, no, okay. I'll leave it alone.
Jesus.
Yeah, man. I think it's several things. Because I'm still going through, the healing process myself. Some of the things that come to the top of my mind is one, just kind of be honest with how you're feeling. Actually, me and Jonathan had this conversation. Be honest with how you're feeling. and actually verbalize how you're feeling. Like if you talking to somebody, or even if you just got to talk out loud to yourself, just like whatever you feel internally, get it out. Like say it, like hear yourself say it, so you can allow yourself to just be honest and acknowledge however you're feeling. Definitely therapy. Definitely therapy. I've been meeting with a guy for almost a couple months now, man. And thankfully he's a man of faith. So he's been helping me process through a lot of things. Get in a community where people share the same experience, but they cope in a healthy way. That's like the biggest thing. Preferably like a community of faith, right? Like other men who have lost their fathers, that can help you from a faith perspective on how to heal. And I would say the last thing, man, is to live. That's actually one of the last, I guess the last theme conversations that my father and I had before his speech began to go away and everything. My wife and I, we were in East Africa, we were in Uganda, and we found out when he was diagnosed, he had brain cancer. And I said, Dad, like, you know, we on the other side of the world, like, you know, we'll get on a flight like tomorrow if there's one back to Michigan, and we'll be there. He was like, no, I don't want you to come back. I was like, Dad, this is a pretty serious like diagnosis. And it was already like, it started at stage 4. And he was like, no, Austin, I want you to stay. And I was just like, Dad, like, why? Like, why do you want me to stay? And he said, he was like, because me and your mom, we've already enjoyed our life. Now it's time for you and your wife to enjoy your life and prioritize each other and experience these things that y'all set out to do. And I was just like, Dad, are you sure? He was like, yeah, I'll be here when you get back. Enjoy Africa. I want y'all to FaceTime me, show me everything, but stay. And when it's time for y'all to come back, I'll be here. Just make sure, you know, y'all come show me everything. And so like I said, the theme of that conversation and that message was just like continue to live, right? No matter, I mean, in a health, like I keep saying, in a healthy way. And so whatever live means for you, man, continue to go on, continue to know that like we have to continue that legacy. Like the legacy doesn't stop at us. He passed the torch to me and my brother and my sister. So it's now time for us to continue running so we can eventually pass that torch to our children. So
man, good, man. That's good.
Beautiful statement. Beautiful statement. One thing when I think of that, I say first off, at any age, you can't throw salt on an open wound. So you got to get rid of the bitterness. You can't be bitter about it. You want to heal. You want to come out healthy. You want to have the right perspective. Having strong men around you definitely helps. You brothers were around me when I went through the loss of my dad. You know, dad talked me off a ledge, but you know, he may have got me out of some crazy thought patterns. That's another good thing. But I would say at any stage, whether you are a young man, whether you are a developing man, whether you are an older man, I think of what the Bible says, where it says, I think it's in Philippians, where it says, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are good report, if there's anything praiseworthy, think on these things. And the God of peace will, so I've just jacked up the scripture, but at the same time, reflecting on the good things, reflecting on the good advice, reflecting on the leadership that you were given, that direction, the fun times, the joyous moments. Danielle reflected on the scrapbook, the memory book. I have a whole host of pictures of my dad's life. But just thinking on those things that actually were positives to you and getting rid of all the negative, because no matter what age, you know, you lost your father at the end of the day, everything's going to be a memory. You might as well process what's going to be good and healthy, and it's going to help you grow and go forward. You may not have gotten everything that you wanted to get. That's fine. Take what you have and work with that. Any piece is a building block to a next step. So don't be bitter about what you didn't get. Look at what you got. Be happy, be thankful for that. Rejoice in that little bit and add to it. And like the gentleman said, build a legacy from that. You never know what may inspire you. But on the flip side, I want to wrap this up with another thought. And again, this is all geared toward helping. How does a man who feels lost from having an absent father heal? So say your dad was absentee, ghosted you, never knew him. What can we tell him to allow his healing to process?
Well, I would just try to talk to maybe my mom to find out some things about him. What was he going through? Tell me something about him so I can get all some understanding. The Bible says, in all that getting, get understanding. Maybe that will help you better understand why he departed, why he left. And I'm not going to try to absolve him of why he left, but if you get a better understanding, the pressures that he was going through, and then of course you got to just deal with it, the forgiveness piece, man. You know, you just have to forgive at the end of the day, and ask God to heal your heart. But that's one aspect of it. I would just try to find as much information about him and try to find out why he wasn't there, you know, and those types of things. Did he love me? Did he care? Or did what caused him to leave? If your mom would be willing to share all those types of things, I would just try to get answers and then find peace in that, and those types of things.
Yeah, and I would just echo on what Pastor Malcolm just said. And in addition to that, if there's an emptiness or a longing there, to identify a spiritual father. I know a lot of individuals who didn't have a father growing up, and they've been able to find spiritual dads that have been able to stand in. It wasn't necessarily a stepfather, and like it was just a man in the church who had a father's heart, and basically it just gathered fatherless children, really, and became a father to them. So I would say, pray and ask God to reveal that person to you. Ask that person to, come your way. God talks about He's a father to the fatherless. He is definitely that. But even asking God for, an earthly father that they could connect to.
Good.
Yeah, I like that, brother Danielle. I would say the same thing. I would ditto that if I could, and I should. So yeah, find that, since we're here on earth, try to find that earthly father, someone that can give you those attributes and help you get to that in line, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I would say one thing that I'm like really thankful for in my season of grief is like I haven't turned to any detrimental substances or activities to cope with everything that's going on, right? So when these feelings arise, it's like, all right, I want to talk to my wife. I want to talk to my brother about it. I'm gonna go for a run for, a couple miles. Like I have these healthy things that I use to cope when those feelings start to come up. So I would say like whatever feelings you have as a result of your father being absent, understand what those feelings are and know how you react to those feelings. Because you don't want to get in a place where you're like, I want to go drink everything. I want to go smoke everything. I want to go sleep with every woman. I want to go spin as many ones at the strip club as I can, right? So just like understand what happens when those feelings arise and just learn how to just learn healthy ways to cope with however you feel.
That's great. It's great advice you gentlemen gave. I will say to that, man, look at it like this: a closed hand can't receive, so a closed heart can't heal. So you got to be open. You have to forgive. I know that may be hard, from a standpoint of your dad never being there. You feel abandoned, you feel hurt, you feel rejected. So it's like, forget them. Why should I give forgiveness to them? But think about it. Whatever you're holding on to bitterness wise against that man, you're actually creating in your own heart. So you may one day, out of not just even knowing it, out of negligence, you might cause yourself to be an absentee father because you held on to such bitterness from your dad leaving you, from you having never had that relationship, that guidance, and never not knowing them. So first step is always forgiveness. Because once you forgive and your heart is open, you never know what God will bring your way. But if your heart is closed, if you're bitter about it, you're angry, there's no telling which way you could turn. That's one of the reasons why we do have so many identity issues. People are confused about who they are. People are getting, and Danielle hit it, joining gangs, crime, so many crazy things because, again, not knowing who you are. But find out who you are first in forgiving, opening your heart, and let God handle it. Get around some people that can structure you better. We've all hit this on the head. Get around some people wiser than you. It's nothing like having people that are smarter than you in your camp. If people don't know any more than you, elevate yourself. Find some others that do. And that's the best thing I can give you. Because again, if you get around the right people, they show you the right structure, If they have God in their lives, ain't no telling where you can go from that. And that'll make up all the difference in the world, because God will be a father that, trust me, that you never had. And he's always been there. So I just have to echo that statement right there. But I want to thank y'all for joining us today for this Mancode conversation. I always enjoy these because I always see a different side to the brothers when we talk about things, because sometimes we just don't get these out in everyday interactions. So I just like to thank y'all for your open heart, your honesty, your candidacy. This just been good. This has been good for me. Good
Amen.
open session. And I hope for you in the viewing audience, this has been good for you as well. Again, we got a lot of fathers out there in the world, got a lot of children out there in the world. We want to connect y'all back to one another. And we really want to just give you some light, give you some tidbits, give you some things that we've experienced and gone through, just help you connect the dots going forward. But look, like, subscribe, share the Mancode conversation. This is a time that this needs to go out to every male you know, every niece, nephew, cousin. Get it out there. Everybody needs to have this, because everybody needs healing. Everybody needs to know there is hope, there is something better, and God has a future and a plan for you too. But I'm gonna wrap it up like this. Until next time, keep the Mancode. We're gonna see y'all soon.